Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So let's get started. We have quite a few people here, so let's go ahead. So just to start, uh, I'm Daniel Shiro. I'm the Cambridge CELTA Main Course Tutor at CNA. I also work for Colégio Rio Branco in the middle school and high school programs. And we'll be talking about how to develop your teaching through self-assessment. To start, um, we'll start with an activity. Okay, so in the chat box, write, but don't send yet, one area you want to develop as a teacher. Any areas. Don't send yet, please. And it's okay to say no idea. You don't have to feel bad about not having any ideas. All right. Yes, the recording will be available. And then when I say waterfall, you can send what you wrote. So I'll give you 30 seconds to write one area you want to develop as a teacher. Okay. Hi, Fabio. Hi, Clarice. Yes, the recording will be available. Okay. So everyone ready? So when I say waterfall, you press enter and you send one area you want to develop as a teacher. So let's go. Waterfall. Interesting. Right, time management, pronunciation, assessment, implementing more games. Interesting. Culture, teach pronunciation, TTT, Fernanda. Assessment, okay, great. Time management, classroom management, great. Giving feedback, also. Wow. So, Michael, entrepreneurship, okay, great. Assessment, all right. Class planning, energetic classes, great ideas. So we'll be talking about some of those things. And then if you have questions, you can send questions in the chat. And then at the end of this talk, I'm going to try to answer some of the questions. Okay, great. So first things first. So many of you are here because you want to hear about self-assessment. Okay, to start, we need to think about you. Okay, so right now, you might be feeling stuck in your career or with your classes, demotivated somehow, maybe tired because of work, because of the routine. Maybe you cannot see far ahead in your career or even in life. You might feel that you're not growing as fast as you want to grow and that you're not at your best at the moment. However, there is nothing to feel bad about. Okay. So remember that you're not alone. Many of us will feel the same way. So it's common for teachers to feel tired or feel demotivated from time to time because, yes, our work is very demanding. We work a lot, and it's totally okay to feel that way. Sometimes you need to re-energize, find your balance, and it's part of becoming a better teacher. Your well-being comes first. Okay, so I can safely say that a healthy and motivated teacher is what students and schools want. Okay, it makes lessons more interesting, engaging, productive. Okay, my mother used to say that you have to uh, be well yourself so that you can take care of others. So this is exactly the same thing. Okay, think of yourself first, how you're feeling. So for self development, if you feel I need some time, I need to take a breather, and then come back to self development, to professional development, that is perfectly okay, right? Uh, One of the first steps for you to do self assessment is know thyself. Very very formal. Let's make. But where does it come from? Okay. Uh, Hi from Algeria. Nice. So we have the Socratic interpretation, not the one from Corinthians, the Platonic interpretation, the empiricist, the postmodern interpretation. But I'll summarize what it means to know yourself. To know yourself, think of the past experiences, how they have shaped and defined who you are. Um, there are external factors and past experiences that are outside your control. Okay? But you should understand your past and not be limited by what happened. Okay, so even if you had bad experiences as a teacher, you can look forward and try to change that. Also, there are some external factors such as culture, so where you come from, your community, your ethnicity, the language you speak. If you don't speak English as a first language, so you can bring a lot from your first language to English. The strategies that you used, the way you learned. Also, religion and political assumptions. We're not going to talk about any of this, but they also play an important role in making who you are right now. Okay, so don't fight that. So knowing yourself is also to recognize your full potential for knowledge while breaking away from ignorance. Here, I'm not talking about ignorance in the sense of being stupid. No, we are talking about ignorance uh, about in terms of not knowing things, not knowing what you could be doing, not having the knowledge. And the last one is the Socratic idea that true wisdom is knowing what you don't know. Because it's impossible for someone to know everything. But recognizing that there's a lot we don't know and working towards learning more should be a lifetime goal for anyone, especially teachers. So today, you might know something, but the next year, you might be a completely different teacher. Why? Because you deconstructed what you know and started building on top of that. So, in terms of reflection, think of why do you teach? What makes you get out of bed every morning? What motivates you to keep going? What enjoyment do you get from teaching? So, finding this inner motivation can stop you from thinking that you are not developing. It can also lead you to development for your own sake, not because anyone is demanding that from you, not because of an external obligation. So if you want to learn and feel that you're learning and feel good about that, that's the most important thing. And what is the context in which you teach? Think that we often adapt to the students we have, to the materials we use, to the schools we work for. So understanding how you adapt and how you imprint your own teaching beliefs without denying the context can give you some peace of mind. It can ease the conflict between who you are as a teacher and your environment. You may not like some of the activities in the course book, but then you can adapt. You can use your own knowledge. You can use your skills to adapt that. And you are the only person that knows your students as well as you do. So no course book, no materials will be able to 100% care for all their students. So you need to adapt. So you need to know the context in which you teach. Also think of how did your students help you become the teacher that you are now? You might have had difficult students that at the time you thought were really challenging, really difficult. But in hindsight, they were actually teaching you to be who you are. So adapting to our students means that we are constantly trying new things to find the best approaches, to find the best techniques, to find the best methodologies to teach our students. So then, when you see your students are developing, that you also feel motivated to do more. So it's a positive, it's that encouraging feedback cycle. They see that you are developing, they see that you are adapting to them, they get more motivated and they motivate you. Also think of what is your experience as a teacher? Does it influence your teaching? And who is your role model as a teacher? Think of one teacher who had the most impact on your life. It might be more than one. So what did they do that you try to emulate? What is the strength that they had that you try to bring into your teaching? For instance, when I was starting as a teacher, I really tried to be like my teachers from back when I was a student in Manchester. Why? Because I saw that they tried to engage the students, but they never forgot to teach grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. They showed that they were listening to us. They were committed to our development. They actually wanted to know about us. Of course, we were from different parts of the world, and they actually got an interest for that. Okay, so try to listen to your students and think of how you've developed um, as a teacher. Also, how how confident in your teaching skills are you? And how do you deal with your ego? Here I'm talking about confidence, not as arrogance, vanity, or inflated ego. It should be well known for you what your strengths and your weakness and how you deal with them. And we should always check our ego at the door. And maybe when we leave, we can forget the ego by the door, right? And when you are open to learn from your students, the same way your students must be open to learn from you. You are growing as a professional and also as a person. Okay. So again, being confident is not being egotistical, narcissistic, or overconfident, because we always have something to learn. Think of the context in which you teach, and how to start improving and developing as a teacher. Think of setting smart goals. Think that these smart goals, you have to be specific. You must know what you want to achieve. It has to be well defined. However small your objective is, it should be specific. Think of how you will know that you have achieved something. Is there a way to measure progress? So don't think in abstract terms. Think of things that you can actually do. So make it achievable. Is it possible? Is it something concrete? Is it realistic? Because if it's not, it might lead to frustration rather than improvement. Is the objective, the goal, relevant? So does it align with your overall objectives? It must be important and meaningful to you. Think of also the time frame. You should set deadlines. You should set a time frame. So when are you going to achieve these goals? Because this will ensure that you focus on your goals and give you a sense of urgency. Think of your universe. Think of the students. Think of the lesson. Your language knowledge. So you, as a teacher, this is your universe. And these are the areas that can help you take control of your teaching by self-assessing, by knowing more about these areas. Here we're going to have an overview. For example, for your students, let's think about some aspects which are involved in your lessons, starting from students. Without your students, they wouldn't need anyone to teach, right? So when you learn a bit about your students and how they develop and how they learn best, you can assess your own teaching. They can be a reflection of the teacher. But how can you know more about your students? Maybe conduct a needs analysis to actually find out what their level is, their strengths, their weaknesses, wants and needs. You can put this to paper. So you can have this and you can come back to that from time to time. Think of learner preferences, okay? And how they prefer to learn. So from a few years back, for example, Cambridge, for instance, stopped using learning styles. I've stopped talking about learning styles many years ago. Let's talk about preferences. Why? How can you balance the activities so that students, yes, they use their preferences. If they prefer grammar, they work on grammar. If they don't like grammar, how can you make grammar a part of your lesson? And the students who don't like grammar, they will actually enjoy and take advantage of that. How can you push them, challenge them? Set clear goals for students. What do you expect from students? And how can you assess progress? Are you going to give them tests, quizzes, formative or summative tests? Remember that formative tests are the one that will show you how you can adapt to your classes to the students' needs. And summative will be at the end of periods in which you actually test if the students learned throughout that period. So Karina, good question. An example of preferences. For instance, we used to talk about students who are more visual, more kinesthetic, more auditory. Nowadays, we think of preferences. How do students prefer to learn? do they prefer to learn by listening? So if they prefer to learn by listening, are we going to just give them listening? Are we going to let them not make notes or not do some reading activities? Quite the opposite. We can use the listening skills, but we also have to develop the other areas. We can show them how important reading will be for their development. If they prefer to do grammar exercises, we can show that they need to actually use the grammar more in speaking, in writing, and recognize patterns of grammar within texts instead of just saying, so you like grammar, I'm going to give grammar, grammar, grammar. No, we have to help them develop the other areas. Frequently for exam students, I found that some of them really like speaking and they develop speaking, but then they have to write in exams. And then they have never worked on writing. And then we have to start from there. We have to focus more on writing. Okay, great. Think of how does the progress of your students say about your lessons and about you? How you need to change? How do you want to change? Okay. So for example, if the students are having low performance with grammar, so how does that say about how you're teaching grammar? It's either you are not getting through for students, they are not having enough practice, or you are not making the grammar clear enough for students. So try to adjust to that. Also remember that students, they need to be able to use. Having studied something does not mean that students know how to use it. Let me give you an example. A student may feel that they've learned present perfect because they've seen it a gazillion times, but they never even grasped the concept, let alone be able to use it properly. So you can assess your students on use rather than what they have seen. You should know that the same way your experiences in your context shaped who you are, students also have their own. So maybe they haven't seen enough, studied enough of something to be able to use it. Also, work towards a healthy, light environment. This will make learning more effective. Why? Because it will also make your lessons lighter for you. When students are having fun, you are laughing with them, and you're having fun with them. So you get this energy back and forth. When teaching, remember that you are the teacher, not the entertainer. So not every lesson needs to be fun. Not every lesson will be amazing. We just talked, we discussed. Sometimes you're going to need some lessons in which the students are quiet, thinking, processing information. When giving feedback, try to be honest, transparent with their students. But then also be open to listen to feedback. This feedback from students, even when students cannot or don't know how to give constructive feedback, there is feedback in what they say. Any criticism that they have needs to be taken into consideration. Maybe they have a mistaken view of what you're doing, and then you can clarify that, but you'll never know if you don't ask. Enjoy learning from your students as much as they should enjoy learning from you. You might be surprised with how much they have to teach you, especially when you have groups. They can For example, you have a student who is a director at a company. They can teach us things that you've never even heard about. Stop doing all the heavy lifting for your students. You think of going to the gym. Imagine that you're going to the gym and the instructor, the personal trainer, is doing all the heavy lifting for you. You are not developing. They are. So you as a teacher, you have to let students have some sort of challenge, okay, manageable challenge, but they have to work. They have to practice. So when they are doing, for example, speaking activities, don't interrupt them. Don't interrupt them all the time. Of course, you can help, just like at the gym. There is someone to help you, to correct, to course correct, to correct your movements, to tell you what you're doing wrong. But then you let them work. Another dimension, another aspect of your lesson is before the lesson starts, lesson planning. Someone here mentioned that they want to work on the lesson planning. And time management can also be helped by the use of a lesson plan. Think of how do you organize your lessons? Okay, in what part of the lesson? What is the most important part of the lesson in which students will actually reach the aims of the lesson? When are students going to do and show that they learned what they were supposed to learn? How effective are your lessons? How do you know? So one way is to set and actually write aims for the students. And then set and write aims for yourself. This way, you can know what students have achieved, what the students have done in that lesson, and what you have done in that lesson. Students don't have to know what your personal aims are, but you will. So measure the achievement of these aims in a concrete way. You can write it down, you can make notes, you can record your lessons. We'll talk more about that. And how can you plan your lessons? I'll give you a very simple, very summarized version of a lesson plan. Think of the lesson aims. Think of students will be better able to do something. So avoid vague language like understand. Understand better. Know. Learn. This we cannot measure. Remember, SMART goals. It's not measurable. It's not specific. Think of actions. They will be better able to use, for example, present continuous, past perfect. To do what? With the past simple, past perfect. Think of how they will be able to do this by the end of the class. So before the class ends, will they have used this? If you see them use, that's a concrete way to see the achievement of aims. For the personal aims, think of what you'll try to do in that lesson. I'll be better able to do this, do that. Also think of the lesson stages that you're going to use, the lesson procedures, what you're going to do, how you're going to give instructions, how you're going to make grammar clear, vocabulary, and then make some notes on the outcomes of the lesson. Was the lesson successful? Okay, but how do you know? What was the evidence? I saw that students were using this while talking about that. Great, this is more concrete. There are some strategies that you can use for lesson planning. you don't need a tutor or anyone to look at your lesson plan. But select one, just one. If you have 30 lessons a week, pick just one lesson in that week. Then you sketch a brief lesson plan, just like we've just seen. Force yourself to write clear lesson aims. And then you evaluate the lesson by describing what students were better able to do. Think of actionables. What are they better able to do? For example, with skills. Or, for example, use present perfect to talk about life experiences. So they will have to talk about life experiences, and you see if they are using present perfect for that, or if they are avoiding, or if they are using correctly. So be rational about this, be critical. But again, don't be too hard on yourself. You are probably going to learn more about the lessons that fail, the lessons that don't go as planned, than from the lessons that, those easy lessons, that uneventful lessons that are easy to teach and nice, everything was great. But the ones that didn't work will teach you a lot more. Make notes on what you can improve from for another lesson of the same type. If it was a speaking lesson, the next time you teach a speaking lesson, go back to this one, to your notes. Say, could have done this, so I'll do this for next time. This way, you can experiment with your lessons, test what works for you and for your students. And there is no need to beat yourself for mistakes you make. You need to learn from them. Even, for example, some of you here, I know from the CELTA. And even during the CELTA, if you fail a lesson, but learn from that lesson that failed and learn how to fix those problems, how to develop, how to improve on that, it's development. You're showing that you're growing. And it's okay to fail lessons, but it's much better if you know why this happened. And it's much better to make small, steady, incremental changes every week or every month, rather than never getting to do anything about your teaching. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not going to quote directly, but I believe that it was Pennier that said that a teacher teaching the same lesson, doing the exact thing all the time for 20 years is not as productive, as good as a teacher who always tries to change and develop. I can say that 6 months of making those changes, learning every week, is much better than 20 years doing the same exact thing and not being aware of that. And the last dimension that I want to talk to you about is the language knowledge. First of all, how confident are you with your own level of English? Your level of English may be enough for the classes or groups you have. However, there is always the challenge of knowing more, not only in terms of complex language, but also knowing what you are teaching in more depth. This means that you can get, for instance, the present continuous, which you've probably taught more than 100 times. But how could you make students use it more accurately? Do you know all the problems students might have with this particular structure? Can it be used only to talk about present? don't forget that we can use it for future arrangements. For example, we are starting the webinar at 4 p.m. on Friday. So this kind of thing that you research and learn about can also help you teach with confidence. The same goes for vocabulary. You can also develop, expand your repertoire, open the range of your vocabulary. So you know how to teach from beginners to advanced students. So what can you do to improve? There was a question here about preparation for Cambridge exams, for the C2 proficiency, for instance. This is a way to improve. Okay, so we can look forward language development courses. There are some colleagues, some peers that offer language development. You can read extensively and make sure you notice new language, make some notes, so you can write them down. You can highlight. If you use Kindle, for example, Kindle will if you highlight a word, it will show the meaning of the word. Think of writing to practice. Don't let my students hear this, but you as a teacher, yes, you can use AI to correct your errors, to provide you with quick feedback, even to transform your writing to a more advanced version, more complex version, so you know where to improve. This is a good way to use AI. Not to do the work for you, but to show where you can improve. Of course, nothing substitutes a teacher, but you may not have the chance to have a writing tutor. And even if you have one, they might not be available all the time. And what you can do is, with the tools you have, for example, ChatGPT, for instance, you can use it to give you feedback. You can prepare your students for international exams. Why? Because this will force you to study and understand the format. It will make you study the best structure for the writing parts, for instance. It will force you to study speaking strategies, speaking useful phrases, and this will help you develop your language skills. You can prepare to sit an international exam yourself. For example, the C1 Advanced, C2 Proficiency, also the IELTS. For example, did you know that CNA offers these exams? C1 Advanced, C2 Proficiency. Also for your students, there is B2, B1, so B2 first. And then think of preparing them. But then if you do this first, prepare yourself, it will give you this confidence with the language. If you want to know more about the international certificates, like the Cambridge ones, to know more about the CELTA, there is an action button here on top of the slides. So you can click, follow the Instagram profile, and you can send messages and ask more about these certifications. Okay. Some suggestions. When you study the language, you can start from Grammar for English Language Teachers by Martin Parrott. This one I have here handy all the time. Why? Because when I'm preparing for any level, for my students. I double check things. Maybe I missed a problem, or maybe my something that I'm sure can be used in a certain way. I might be wrong, so I double check. For you to practice the language and develop, I suggest Advanced Language Practice by Michael Vince. It has grammar explanations, and it has lots of practice. Okay, I've I've checked, and many of these books are available at Disal. This one I really liked. I'm a huge fan of Professor David Crystal. Um, he, he's he said that he's not an English teacher. He never taught English, but his ideas came to English language teaching, and they are amazing. There is also practical English usage. So some things we take for granted will be there with explanations and examples. And I'll mention a book by one of my best friends, great friend. This one by Igor Cavalcanti. Why? It has explanations in Portuguese. So if you're not very confident about your level of English, there are explanations for you in an easy way, in a very objective way. So I do recommend those 5 for you to start developing your language skills. Let me give you some suggestions that you can implement like tonight. A teaching journal. Oh my God, is that a diary? Dear diary. No. By creating a teaching journal, you're going to record your development, and then you can go back to that. Of course, you can write, Dear diary, I did something wrong in my lesson today, and I regret that. Next time, I'll do that. But I don't think that's useful. Try to include some lesson plan sketches. I've seen, I'm not going to mention names, but I've seen the author of the book is Igor Cavalcanti. Okay. He's also a great teacher, great presenter, and I do recommend that book. I've seen a notebook with lesson plans, simple lesson plans, but that the teacher wrote and printed some, and from time to time, pasted the lesson plans to this notebook. This notebook was huge. Okay, I was surprised, and it was amazing to see that. So there were some personal aims, some notes. You can track students' engagement and progress lesson by lesson. Using, for example, the smiley faces, or the thumbs up, thumbs down, or arrows, from lesson to lesson. You can make language notes. So when you're going to teach, for example, the present continuous, you can make some notes from the Grammar for English Language Teachers. So it will help you gain more confidence. You can make notes of feedback you receive and give. Okay, this might be something simple, small, but I'm sure this will boost your teaching and build your confidence. Also remember to establish SMART goals, and then you can actually write them down. Okay. Someone said that when you don't write your plans, they are not plans, they are just wishes. Okay. So if you write them down, they will also force you to go back to those, read, and try to improve on those. Try to, this is awful. I know, this is awful for most of us. You can film yourself in one of your lessons. You can pay attention to how you give instructions, if they are clear, the student's engagement, your body language, how you move around the room, where you're looking. For instance, we tend to spend most of our time looking to the students on our right side. So are you giving attention to the other students in the other part of the room? Your board work, is it organized? Is it legible? Are students having fun? Are you having fun? Are you seeing how students are enjoying the lesson? I know this might sound awful. For example, I would never want to watch the recording of this webinar ever in my life, but I'm sure at some point I'll have to do that. For professional development, you can start reading on methodology, on teaching techniques. Good starting points are The Practice of English Language Teaching by Jeremy Harmer, Learning Teaching by Jim Scrivener, and also get the book to prepare for the TKT. So yes, Michael, watching your own lesson is painful sometimes. Like, oh my God, I don't believe I said that. The first lesson I watched back when it was in a training session that I was having as a novice teacher, and then I dropped the CD player at the time. Okay, almost 20 years ago. I dropped it, so I almost broke the CD player. I also tripped on the fan. It was one of the most ridiculous things. But then my boss showed me how nervous I was, and then at another point, she recorded one of my lessons with real students and showed me, look, this was your first recording when you started working here, and then here is another one, and it was great. It was great. I've watched some of the recordings. See, it happens, but then you learn from the mistakes. Maybe the way you explained the grammar was not great, and that is okay. You're going to try to fix that. And then let's go back to how you're feeling. I want to come back to the topic of well-being. You may feel alone because it's you and you only in the classroom. You may feel it's overwhelming because, yes, it often is overwhelming. You may feel undervalued, not by schools necessarily, but maybe by your students, because you don't hear enough praises. You may feel it's all on you to make yourself a better teacher. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Maybe you need help for that. So remember, again, you're not alone. Don't be an island. Don't feel isolated from the world. Even if you live very far from the main centers, like São Paulo, like Rio, you don't need to feel bad about that. You don't need to be far from everyone else, because together we are stronger. So use your network, the professionals that around you. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Okay, I'm sure teachers will want to help each other. Ask another teacher to observe your lesson, but make it objective. You can ask them to record your lesson, but then give them your lesson plan, even if it's a short one. Ask them to observe specific things in your lesson, the classroom management, and so on. Have a feedback session. Ask your peer to give constructive and honest feedback. Set SMART goals for future lessons. And you can observe each other's lessons. Also offer to provide them with feedback. One good exercise is you plan a lesson, your peer will plan the lesson, and you swap lesson plans. Then you teach each other's lessons. It can go completely wrong, but it could also be really good. So you try to be in your peers' shoes. And having another set of eyes uh, to 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 spot areas for development is extremely valuable. For example, I've always been lucky to have people who were helping me push forward. I had good teachers, good tutors who observed my lesson, gave me feedback kept pushing me. And for example, um, I'll give an example of my wife. Okay, she's one of the most dedicated, most talented, most inspiring teachers. I see how students admire her, they like her, and she's a qualified professional. And she teaches in a big school in São Paulo. So sometimes I run my lessons or some lesson ideas through her, and she gives me feedback, and she's quite honest. Like, don't think that would work. I don't think that's a good idea, or maybe there is a problem here. Maybe you could do this instead. Okay, and we've been doing this, helping each other for around 15 years now. Okay, and you have no idea how we improved over the years. So you don't need to get married to a teacher for this, right? But have people close to you help you with feedback and run your ideas by them and exchange ideas as much as possible, even online in forums. Also, for professional development, you have workshops, webinars, you can attend conferences and associations. For example, Brustiso, ISFO, TESOL. I do recommend Brustiso. Also, for professional development, try the TKT preparation modules 1, 2, and 3. Again, CNA offers those. There are language development courses, preparation courses, crash courses, webinars, and workshops just like this one. And of course, I'm going to talk about the one course I love the most. Okay, I'm a CELTA tutor, and some of you here have been have been in the CELTA with me as a tutor. And yes, I'll post the links to the associations, and think of taking the CELTA, because it's a certificate in teaching. You're going to have input sessions with theory and practice. Learn how to plan a lesson to the minimum details. Teaching practice with live real students. You're going to receive constant feedback on your lessons, on your lesson plans, on your development. You have a supportive environment, at least at CNA. You have me and Sergio as tutors. We try to create this nice environment in which we are going to, yes, the CELTA can be stressful, but we try to reduce this stress. And you can have the support of your peers, the other candidates taking the CELTA. You're going to have experienced tutors looking, with a clinical view of your lesson. All the courses are externally assessed. So yes, there is quality assurance. It's the most recognized teaching certificate in the world. This means also that once you take the CELTA and you know the ideas, the concepts, the jargon, you can talk to teachers from around the world, and you know exactly what you're talking about. Some of you that who took the CELTA may have flashbacks with some things I mentioned. And yes, we have Maria. Yes, it's great. It was a great experience. Um, Leonardo, Leonardo was amazing. Luciana, amazing. All amazing uh, candidates. They got the CELTA. They survived. No one got hurt. Um, I not many cried. They cried when they were getting the certificates. Okay, and I have the link, this link for certificações internacionais, and you can click on the link here for certificações internacionais at CNA, and for to know more about the CELTA. And you can also find me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and you can even send an email to celta@cna.com.br, and then you can ask questions. And you can also send me messages by Instagram or my LinkedIn. I'll try to answer them as the best I can. There was, if you have some questions to send, here about preparation courses for CP, for C2 proficiency. There are many courses available online, okay, with qualified teachers. I haven't been running those courses recently, but I know that if you get in touch with CNA, this can be arranged. Okay. Any other questions? Do you ask your students or teachers to evaluate you, asking for feedback? Yes. For example, for the CELTA, it's externally assessed. There is feedback involved. And then from this feedback, this external assessor will arrange and filter what's relevant, what is not, and then will give us feedback and criticism. Yes, a lot of criticism. After all, it's Cambridge. We need to adhere to some standards. Okay. And I'd like to thank all of you. If you have questions, great. But I really enjoyed having you all here, and I hope to see you in the CELTA, in conferences, in Brastiso. Okay, so thank you very much once again. And for all of you who took the CELTA with me, please don't be strangers. Okay. Yes, I'll make this presentation available through my Instagram. How about that? Or if you send me a private message, I'll send you the link. So thank you very much, everyone. And I'd like to thank also Disal for hosting this, and CNA for trusting me with the CELTA. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. We have